Hello and welcome to another edition of Brave Pointers. I'm Eric Whitener, and with me today is Stacy Elwood, APIC Certified Senior QAD Application Consultant.
Thanks for having me here, Eric.
You're welcome. Today we're going to talk about QAD's user interface. Let's start and talk a little bit about the history of the interface over the last 20 or so years.
Thanks, Eric. It's a great idea. We started with QAD with the terminal emulator, the old green screen. You remember the green screen, don't you, Eric?
That I do.
The nice thing about the green screen was it was very easy to use for logging in remotely. So then QAD moved to the client-server mode. This was great because it enabled the use of the mouse. So you could actually do drop-down calendars, drop-down calculators, that sort of thing. The trick with the client-server mode was that it was very difficult to deploy and required a lot of upkeep. So then we moved back to an internet-based browser mode, which is a thin client, eased the problems that we were having with the deployment issues, and also gave the users the processing power back on the server. And today, we're using the new interface, which is the .Net user interface. This interface adds additional flexibility and capability for the users, including things like being able to export directly to Excel and output to PDF, as well as do charts and graphs.
Very nice. Well, I think that a good idea perhaps would be to show those folks some of the overall features and functionality that may benefit them, and that would perhaps be a good reason for them to want to upgrade.
Great idea. Let's show the navigation first.
That sounds good.
So here we are inside the QAD.net user interface. There are 4 different ways we can navigate through the menu. The first way is to click on each folder and expand it. And this is a fairly intuitive way for anyone that's used applications like Windows Explorer. The second way to navigate through the menu is to actually do a search. So if I were looking for something like item master maintenance, as I type, you'll see that my menu is narrowed down to just the things that have what I'm searching for in it. One thing that's important to note here is the things that appear in my menu are only the things that I have security to. So this user has access to just about everything in the system. The third way to navigate through the menu is to actually use the menu numbers. So again, if I were to look for my item master maintenance, I could type in 1.4.1, and you'll see right at the top I have item master maintenance. The last way to navigate through the system is through what we call these process maps. The process maps are great ways to show the entire business process of the system without having to leave the system and go to another process map, say inside Visio, or to look at an external document. These maps are actually completely customizable, but what you're seeing right now is the standard map. So let's take, for example, clicking on items and sites in the setup process, and then we'll go to our define items. Now you'll see in this box that there are boxes or squares for a number of the different functions. These are functions that will actually take you to that menu inside QAD. So again, if I were to go to define items, I can click that box and it will directly take me to item maintenance. One thing that's important to note here is you can also customize these maps to better reflect your own business process, and you can add additional forms, including PDF forms. So that covers the navigation. Now let's talk a little bit about what this favorites thing is. So once you've found what you need in the top box, so again, if we were looking for that item master maintenance, we can click it and we can drag it into our favorites. The favorites are user specific, just as they would be if you were using something like Internet Explorer. So a lot of times what you'll find is we have users drag things into their favorites, and then they only need to look at their favorites. They don't need to use the applications bar at the top. Now this favorite section at the bottom can be organized just as you need it to be. So you can also do things like create new folders. So you can create a folder that's called something like quarterly reports. And then you can click and you can drag whatever programs you need to into that quarterly reports folder. Now these folders are important. Again, they're completely up to you. So if I logged into your computer, I would only see my favorites. I wouldn't see your favorites. One thing that's important to note about favorites is you can also click them to auto start. And what that means is this program will start as soon as you log into the computer. That can be very helpful and save you some time. So now let's move into some of the functionality that QAD has added in the new .NET interface. Throughout the system, there are browses which take the place of the old reports and inquiries. Now, the way this works is you can actually choose a search criteria to narrow down your search. So I could look at something like sort name. In this case, I want to narrow it down by country. So I want to choose where my country contains the word United, so that I'm only looking at United States. Oh, sorry. Do need to make that say contains. So my country contains the word United, and you can add as many different search criteria as you need to. So here I'll also say that my region is equal to the US. So now you'll see that I've updated my number of records to 41. Now, these columns work very similar to the way they would in Microsoft Excel. So I can pick up a column and I can move it to a new place. So for each particular user, they can have the columns in exactly the right order. You can also do things like hide columns. So if you don't need to see a column, I'm going to hide the country, since I know that all my customers are now in the US. And I'll hide our format position because I also don't need that information right now. Now you'll notice that some of the columns here are in blue and some of the columns are in black. The blue means that you can actually link to a different thing in the system. So for example, if I do a right click here on my BravePoint customer, I can go directly to a Google map. And here we are in glorious Norcross where the sun is shining. We can also drill into the map a little bit further or zoom out on the map as well, all the things that we could normally do in a Google page. Now think of the possibilities. Imagine, for example, that you have a shipper number and you can drill directly into Federal Express's website to get up to the minute tracking. Now, one thing that you can also do with your browsers is you can also do things like send them directly to Excel. So we can do an export directly to Excel. And this will save the browse exactly as I have it formatted. Now, another thing that's very neat that we can do here is if we show all of the records, we can do things like counts and summaries. So if I look at my customer, I can add a count. If I go down to the very end, you'll see that I have that count as well. Now these counts and summaries will also translate if you send the report out to Excel as well. Lastly, we can also set up charts and graphs based on a particular browse. So in this case, we'll set up a column chart and we'll look at our customers by state. So we'll change it to state. We're going to change so that we're looking at our states. And our axis here we'll call number of customers. So we'll count the number of customers in each state. You can see that we can also, if we had a numeric value, we would also be able to do summaries, averages, minimums, and maximums as well. So we can preview this chart. We can see exactly that we have a whole lot more customers in California than we do in any other state. And once we have our chart the way we like it, we can also set it to automatically refresh. In this case, our states aren't going to be changing all that often, so we'll leave the refresh turned off. Now what we can do though is we can add this button to our favorites. And you'll see it tells me that it's been added to my favorites. And I can change the name of my browse here, so I can do a right click and click on rename. And I'll change this to my customers by state. And you can call it really anything that you want. Now what happens is if I click on this browse from my favorites, it brings it up in the view that I had already saved. So it saves my chart, and if I can always go back to the grid view as well. So very flexibly, I have created my own report that's just for me. One thing I can also do is in this properties, I can set it to automatically start so that the system will start that report up as soon as I log into the system.
Stacy, thanks so much for that great demo.
Thanks, Eric. It was my pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us for another edition of Brave Pointers. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.